And now, the survival show that once survived getting lost in an IKEA. In this episode, we sit down with Glen Martin. We're going to discuss the often overlooked skill of navigation. Turns out, it's easier than you might think, and your dog is trying to tell you something in a very odd way. Howdy and welcome to the Rabbit Hole's Urban Survival Podcast. This is episode number 225. I'm your host, Aaron, and you are in the rabbit hole, safe and sound. Glen, welcome to In the Rabbit Hole.
Hey, thank you for having me on, Aaron.
Now, we're going to discuss a pretty interesting topic today, and it's a skill that I badly need to get into. So I'm excited to talk to you about this today. And you also have a book, or you are the author of a book, Preppers Survival Navigation, Find Your Way with Map and Compass, as well as stars, mountains, rivers, and other wilderness signs. But that sounds like a pretty complete package you got there.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and there's a few extra things in there as well. So it was quite a project.
Yeah, when I was looking through your book, I could definitely tell. But hey, before we get into the book, let's find out more about you. What's your background? Where do you come from, and how did you get into becoming the author of a navigation book?
Well, I was raised primarily in the Northwest. I grew up on a dude ranch in eastern Oregon at the base of the Strawberry Mountains. You know, as a youngster, a lot of horseback riding, trail rides in the wilderness. I think probably some of the most fun, though, was hunting parties that would come in. Gosh, we had fellow from England that came all the way to our ranch to go hunting there in the mountains of eastern Oregon. Anyway, later, after I finished high school, I did go to college and learned a little bit about architectural and mechanical drafting and made that the base of my career. That's what I did for about 25 years or so. And I did that all over the western United States, but ended up in Texas. Did not care for the humidity or the flat land, the area I was in, and it was about 10, 11 years ago, I came back to the Northwest, and here I am now in the mountains of northern Idaho, and I'm glad to be home.
Yeah. Well, very cool. So you ran off to the city and decided that's not for me.
And then enough was enough. That and big longing for a lot of trees, the natural flowing rivers, snow. And I think I'm the only one up here in the Northwest that looks forward to winter. But I do enjoy snow and a fireplace and a good book. So.
Well, there we go. And so navigation, it's one of those topics that a lot of preppers are interested in, especially new preppers, but they tend to take a very long time getting to it, or in some cases never get around to it. But I think that speaks to a larger societal question in general, which is, why do you think navigation skills aren't common knowledge anymore?
You know, so many people are in big cities. And, of course, as far as finding your way around, all you need is a city map. You don't need to know where north and south are, just what street you're on and what street you want to go to, and that it's listed on a map. Unless maybe you're going on a camping trip or an outing or, you know, something of that nature. Then it can be a little bit difficult. And not only that, boy, navigation can really open the doors for a lot of places that you can go that you may have hesitated to, consciously or not, simply because you wouldn't have known how to get around if you'd went there. You know, and then not only that, you know, people worry about their kids, and I think navigation is important for kids at the very least. When you go on these outings, camping trips, or what have you, it's a good skill, if not a hobby. And, you know, how many times do we hear these horror stories of people getting lost?
Yeah.
And, of course, the book, while primarily navigation, it goes into quite a lot about, you know, survival. let's say you're an expert on navigation. Maybe you are stranded or still lost or waiting for help. You got to know how to survive. So we've thrown that into the book as well too.
Okay.
So navigation is not a hard thing to learn the basics, and it's a feel good thing to know.
For any of the contrarians listening, I'll ask the simple question: why do we need to learn navigation skills when we have these wonderful smartphones and GPS devices and things these days? Well,
batteries go dead, things break, or misplaced, or simply forgotten. There's several places on this planet where you can go and not get a signal, or in your instrument, whether it be a cell phone or a GPS device, not work. Or, there are those that worry about, what if we have that apocalypse event or whatever disaster that may take out a satellite network or throw us off grid? Then these instruments are going to become useless anyway. So they're what everything was built on. If we lose what these electronic devices and gadgets, you've got to go back to the basics. And if you don't know the basics, you're lost and you won't be found.
Once you pick up the basics, is navigation a diminishing skill? So is it something that you have to stay practiced with?
That's a good question. I grew up pretty much self-taught in navigating and in learning declination scales and pace count and all these different things that go into navigation. But when I was approached to write the book, and of course this is after 25 years of, working in business in small or large cities and not really practicing, I got approached a couple of years ago about writing the book, and I really had to think about it. Do I remember everything? I realized, here I am up in the mountains, and this is something I do 3 or 4 times a week, if not more. I go for hikes everywhere right around my immediate area, and it's nothing but wilderness area. But one thing I do is, in my exploring the area around here, it's always been short trips, learning my immediate area, and then expanding a little bit beyond that and what have you. So I was approached by the book, and I thought, I got to get my compass out. There's no reason I shouldn't have been doing this. I know where these places are that I like to go around here, these little waterfalls, these little lakes and what have you. I know how to get there, but, I couldn't lay them out on a map of my own if I wanted to draw my own map. Or if it was dark, I would have a hard time finding these places. In getting approached for the book, I thought, hey, I can do this. I can do this easy. I know all this stuff, and I know I did. But then I thought again, before I started ever writing, I thought, what if I'm wrong? What if I forgot what I think is right? So I turned around and I went back, confirmed everything I already knew, but did learn a few new things in the process. So I think once you learn it and have practiced it a time or two, it stays with you. It will pretty much stay with you forever.
Okay.
And it's a fun thing to do. It's an experience, it's an outing, and it's a terrific thing to do with kids too, something to teach them that has value that they would love to do.
How well do kids cotton to it?
Oh, they love it. For example, we had a barbecue here a couple of weeks ago, and I had previously laid out a map, and this is just around our property here, which is only 12 acres up here in the mountains, but it's all wooded and a lot of overgrowth, and you walk out from the house 20 yards and you're in the woods. So I laid out a map, actually 2 or 3 different maps, different scenarios, with 6 different checkpoints on each one. With each checkpoint, they had to travel a different direction. They had to be able to judge distance via pace count. They had to be able to use their compass to get to that point and then to find the next point. Well, the idea of the competition was whoever winds up closest to the end point wins the prize. And I got to say, it was a couple of the grown-ups got involved in it, but I think it was the kids that overall did the best.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we'll be doing that again. They had a good time, and they learned an awful lot, whether they know it or not.
Really neat. Listener, do you get at least $3 a month worth of value out of ITRH? You should see what we do for the Roving Horde Armada members. Check it out today by visiting itrh.net. Members get access to episodes a day early, access to monthly virtual and in-person meetups in some areas, an invitation to the secret ITRH Armada Facebook group so you can chat about survival all day long with like-minded people, access to every episode ever produced by ITRH. That's right, all the way back to the beginning, including one that was never aired. And those are just a few things you get with your membership when you sign up and become part of the ITRH Roving Horde by going to itrh.net. Again, that's itrh.net. Is navigation 100% a skill, or is there any talent involved in it?
I would say more skill acquired through practice than there is talent.
Okay.
I think anybody with a little bit of patience and taking a little bit of time can be very proficient at it. Just a little bit of reading and a little bit of practice, and it's something you can do in your backyard. You don't have to be out in the wilderness to learn how to do it.
See, that's interesting. I was going to ask, like, are there people that just don't get it? That just, have you ever come across anybody who's just, for one reason or another, is just a navigational idiot? But it sounds pretty, I mean, you're making it sound relatively easy.
Well, I'm sure there's people that, have apprehensions, but once it's getting over that little first hurdle, and once you jump over it and really look at it, it doesn't take long at all to find that it's really fairly simple to understand what's going on. It does take a little practice at getting better, or I should say more accurate at what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
With the practice comes your accuracy.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. What would you say the most common mistakes people make when they get into map reading and or compass reading and things like that? Are there common things that people get wrong or screw up? Or
declination, which is, depending on the area you're in, the difference between true north and magnetic north. That is probably the number one thing that, if you don't know, is going to get you lost, no matter how well you read the compass and the map. If you haven't adjusted for declination, you're going to be in trouble. You can go on a 3-mile hike, and if you've not adjusted for declination, you could be 300-400 yards off your point, east or west of where you need to be. So declination, and you'll see that declination scale on any topographical map in the lower left-hand corner. It'll show that scale for your area. I think the other is the ability to understand features. When you look on a map, they won't draw in a blue line for water per se. You will see contour lines. And knowing how to read contour lines will tell you elevation, how steep that hill is, around the bend, how hard is it going to be to climb. It'll show you where the possibility of water is, things that, may keep you alive or not. It's going to show you rough terrain and easy terrain. Yeah, the declination scale, being able to understand the symbols and contour lines, that type of thing. And then, too, understanding the scale, knowing what scale your map is at, what it means, and how to use it.
Mm-hmm. It's funny. You just said scale, and we were talking about architecture earlier, and it just made me laugh. Like, I guess there's two things there. One, I guess it didn't even dawn on me before we started really talking, as far as like declination, that there are people that don't realize there's a difference between true north and magnetic north. And then scale, and the ability to read a scale, which is a super simple skill. But it's funny. My wife will sometimes I still keep my architectural scales on my desk, and I use them as a ruler, and I use them for all different, as a straight edge and all sorts of different things. And without fail, my wife will come in and pick it up trying to use it as a ruler. And she's like, how do you read this stupid thing? And I'm like, how do you not know how to read a scale? But that makes sense. And it's those little things that I guess people that are used to them can take for granted and not realize other people, like, to them, it's a foreign language.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Back to like the declination scale maps, it's very important to have a current map. When we talk about magnetic north, that is something that changes. That magnetic field moves constantly, is moving around that North Pole. And a map that is 15 years old can be worthless if you're trying to use it with a compass. That declination scale may have changed. It may have changed 2 or 3 times since that print. So, anybody that's serious about going out on a long hike and doing some navigation, they know they have to stop by the Forest Service or their forage supply place or whatever and get a current map of that area in order to be successful.
Oh, wow. That's great. That's great to know. You mentioned people can do some of this stuff in their backyard as far as learning it goes. What are some simple things, or are there simple things people can do in everyday life to keep those skills sharp and to learn to judge distance and do some of these different things?
I would say shadows. Shadows is a big thing. Everybody's functioning during the day. Everybody's looking at shadows. And to understand, especially, maybe it's a flagpole casting a shadow or what have you. If it's 12 o'clock noon and you're outside, you see a shadow cast, you know that shadow is pointing due north at 12 o'clock noon. As that shadow, or as the hours get later, that shadow will start to move to the right. And so you can use a shadow as a clock also to get an idea of what time it is during the day.
Mm-hmm.
But shadows will give you an idea of direction. Of course, the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. So if you have the sun on your right-hand side, that you're basically facing north. But then again, you have to keep in mind that, as we move into the later summer months, the sun will rise further north of east. There's only 2 days out of the year that it rises exactly east and sets exactly west. So, so those are things to think about. Pace count, knowing what your footstep is. And that is something I think probably one of the most important things in navigation and walking terrain that a person needs to know. I know exactly that my average footfall on the flat ground is about 2 feet 10 inches. I can stretch just slightly and walk 3 feet. I can walk off 100 yards, count it, and not miss it by 2 or 3 feet. So in that regards, I can judge distance very well, or know how far I've traveled or how far I've came. So that's something you can do in everyday life, is learn your pace count, what your footfall is. At night, the moon and constellations, the Little Dipper and the Big Dipper, being aware of those and where that North Star is. Everybody likes to, when they can see them, look out at night and see the stars. Take a moment and find that North Star, find that Big Dipper. That's how you're going to find north when it's nighttime. There's a lot of common sense. It's, thinking about it. Okay, here I am in downtown, whatever. What if I was out in the middle of the wilderness? How would I know which way is north? So there you go. You just think about it a little bit. Where's the sun at now? What time of the day is it? Where will it be? That'll tell you which direction you're heading or which direction you need to go. Mm-hmm. There's a bunch of little things that you can take into consideration, give you that aha moment.
Yeah. Neat. So besides map and a compass, is there other, without getting into electronic toys, are there other gizmos and gadgets that are helpful in learning navigation and in just navigating?
Gosh, there's a number of things out there that they can say that will give you an idea, but that's all they'll do is they will give you a rough idea. One is moss on tree, and I've heard that. There are areas you can go deep into a forest where you're going to see moss on all sides of a tree.
Mm-hmm.
But if not in that situation, in more of a scattered type, less forest area, that will tend to hold true. Another is I've heard, and actually research has been done on a couple of these. A herd of cattle grazing in a field will almost all generally be tending to point north as they graze. A dog, when it does its duty, will tend to point its nose north. So, there's some interesting things out there, out of the ordinary, to help you find north, even your birds, the way they fly. But none of them can be or give you a real accurate, idea of where you're heading, something that you can really rely on for any length of distance.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So your book, Prepper's Survival Navigation, goes beyond just navigation, as we talked about in the beginning. Can you tell us a little bit more about what all you included in the book?
Yeah, sure. Now, of course, these other things, I get into more of what happens when you get lost, when navigation fails, and you are lost. What do? So I get into the fear factor, getting over that, communication, trying to signal for help to be found, as well as, shelter making, how to survive through the night should you become lost or know you're going to be stranded for a few days. Now, these things, in fact, survival medicine, which my good friends, Dr. Bones and Nurse Amy, Joe and Amy, I'm sure you folks know them, incorporated Joe and Amy to help me out with some parts of the medical in the book and self-treatment. So going beyond the navigation part, we get into the shelter making, a little bit into plants and other aspects of survival. But there, admittedly, I did have to go to other sources to help provide that information. But I spent a lot of good time there and went to good, reliable, sound sources, or it wouldn't have went in the book. So igloos, this is one, it goes into a little detail about how to build an igloo. But as with anything in that book, it's not read it and you're an expert.
Right.
You read it, you go out, you practice it. Reading it may help. Having the book with you, if you happen to be lost, is going to be a big help. But more than anything is find the techniques that you don't know or aren't sure about and read them and practice.
Great advice. So you are also the chief bottle washer, as we were joking about earlier, of prepperbroadcasting.com. Is that the best place for people to connect with you and find your book and do all that wonderful stuff?
It's probably the easiest place to remember Prepper Broadcasting. On there, in fact, I have the bookstore. There's some good reading material there, so you can find my book there. It's on Barnes & Noble and Amazon and all those other places. I've got it in my own library here in town.
So I guess for those that aren't familiar, what is prepperbroadcasting.com?
Okay, and you're aware of it because In the Rabbit Hole is broadcasted
yes,
there
we are.
twice a day, every Thursday. But Prepper Broadcasting is a conglomeration of, I would have to say, 40, maybe 45 of the best prepper survival related shows out there. There are a couple of shows that lean more towards the news side of it. I mean, gosh, you've got anybody you can name up there. And then, of course, every night we do have a live show every night in a chat room where people can listen and talk to the host, ask questions, and what have you. So that's a lot of fun in that chat room. A lot of great information, and I really appreciate you guys letting me rebroadcast you on that network.
Absolutely. We're proud to be on it with you. Well, Glenn, I really appreciate your time today. I appreciate you coming on and sharing your knowledge, and I look forward to hearing people getting out there and learning the skills and using your book to do it.
Well, I appreciate it, Aaron, and I thank you for giving me the opportunity and having me on. It was a pleasure talking with you.
Show notes, links to Glen and his books and other resources can be found at intherabbithole.com/E225. Get more survival goodness and help support the show. Visit itrh.net to become part of the Roving Horde Armada. It's members, just like you, that really help keep the lights on. Again, visit itrh.net. That wraps up episode number 225 from the Lone Star State. Till next time, stay safe and sound.